Hey, it's Dave Dolphin at practicalworshipblog.com, sharing ideas, tips, and practical advice for the everyday worship leader. Today, I want to show you some examples of the charts that we use for our bands, the general charts that we have, but also the charts that we have specifically for the drums, and in some cases, the keys position as well. So the first thing you'll notice is that these do not look like the charts that you typically download from like Song Select or Praise Charts or things like that. I wanted something that the band could know where the chords changed based on the music and the timing and not necessarily the lead vocal. I didn't want the band to be dependent on the words to know when to change the chords. And so this type of chart is called a Nashville style chart. Now, Nashville charts generally have numbers instead of actual chord letters, but this is in a similar style, and the idea is that every letter here represents one measure. So this is the Casting Crowns version of Glorious Day. So the intro, the first measure is B, the second measure is E, third measure is B, fourth measure is E. If you get to a situation where maybe there's two chords in a measure, you just do something like this where you put them in parentheses and it's just known that half of the measure belongs to the E and half of the measure belongs to the B here. Anything crazier than that, like for example right here in the bridge where you play F sharp for 3 beats and then on the 4th beat you switch up to the G sharp minor, I just notate it with some numbers right up here. I also put it in red so it stands out a little bit, just saying, hey, heads up, this is something kind of unusual, so pay attention to this. And the goal here is to put the entire song on one page. There's no flipping, there's no second page, there's just one page and the entire song lives on that particular page. Also notice that if a section repeats, like right here, in the verses and the choruses right here, that I don't repeat the chords. If I've already established that this is the progression for the verse, then I just say verse. Because the idea here is that I don't want people's heads buried in the music. I want them to lean on this, to learn the song and get familiar with it. But by the time we actually get to service time on Sunday morning, they should be playing a lot from muscle memory and instinct and not necessarily leaning on the chart for every single chord they're going to play. They might need to reference it from time to time and they might forget, okay, wait a minute, what is that first chord in the bridge? But I want them to lean on it like you would maybe a crutch and maybe not necessarily a wheelchair, if that makes sense. Now these charts go to the bass player, the keyboard player, all the people making musical notes. But I do every now and then use charts like this for the keyboard player, maybe 5% of the time. Like for example, this is Vertical Church Band, I'm Going Free, and it's got that little piano lick, that dun 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 dun, dun 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 dun. So that right there is notated, the first part, the first couple of measures on there. Then when you get to the verse, I just put the chords, and they just kind of play the riff there. But there's a lick going into the chorus, those last two measures that pick up into that chorus. So I want to make sure I catch that. So in cases like that where there's specific licks that really need to happen, I've been known to make a chart like this that's a little bit more like sheet music. But again, I don't have every single first ending and second ending and repeats and everything. Again, this is just enough to get familiar with the song, but if you just try to rely on this and not really know the song very well, you're going to fail. You need to internalize the song at least a little bit and then use this chart as a crutch for those times where you just need to reference something really quick. The final kind of chart that we have is we actually have charts for our drummers, and they look like this. It's basically the words on one side and then some notes about kick patterns and crash rides and hi-hats and things like that on the right-hand side. So this is the Carrie Joe version of Forever. And in this first verse, the drummer would be out. At the turn here, it's got the kick on beat 1, but it also has a kick in that 16th right before beat 2. And then also it rides the snare with those 16th notes. And then when you get to the ground began to shake, when you get to that part, it switches to 4 in the floor kick with a kind of a tom groove, and then you hit the snare on 4. And the idea here is to just note where certain things really need to be accented. Maybe certain kick patterns, especially songs like a lot of Hillsong songs that grow. A lot of the dynamics have to come from the drums, and how you layer that's really, really important. What I was finding when I first got here is that the drummers that would play, being a drummer myself, I would hear certain things as far as like how to set up the foundation for this song. And so I was expecting certain kind of kick patterns or certain feels, and then we'd get to rehearsal and those would be there, and we would spend time trying to get those going. So this was my way of maybe communicating that vision, and like, hey, listen for that kick part or listen for that tom groove in this part of the song, so that when we get to rehearsal, they've already got that. They've already had the time to work on that. There's nothing more frustrating than getting to rehearsal and realizing that you didn't study something that you're supposed to, even worse, studying something that wasn't a big deal. And so I'm trying to not waste the player's time and be able to communicate vision and direction prior to rehearsal. And this is the way that we accomplish that. So that's kind of a look into the various charts that we use for our drummer, bass player, guitar player, and our keyboard player. Well, thank you so much for watching. Here at Practical Worship, we love sharing ideas and tips and practical advice for the everyday worship leader with videos just like this one. So if this was helpful, hey, hit that like button. And also, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. That way you're notified when new videos come online here at YouTube every single week. And if this was helpful to you, it might be helpful to someone else that you know. You might consider sharing this on social media. Share it on Facebook and Twitter and places like that. And for more great practical advice about leading worship, check out practicalworshipblog.com.